Okay, here we go. Episode number 6 of the MAREI podcast. I'm here with James Gregg. My name's John Wires, and of course, everybody knows Julie Anderson from Anderson Associates Law. She did a update a bit ago, I believe, for Kim Tucker, who runs MAREI, and she's back with us to give us another update of the tenant-landlord environment. And sounds like there's some interesting stories out there, but let's go ahead and go into Julie and let's see what she has to offer to the real estate investors out there and give us a market update.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. My name is Julie Anderson. I'm the managing partner at the law offices of Anderson and Associates. So I'm licensed to practice law in the state of Missouri, Kansas, and Nebraska, including all of the relevant federal courts and the federal bankruptcy courts in each of these states. I focus my practice on representing real estate investors. When people ask me what I do, I say I'm in the business of keeping real estate investors in business, and it's a very crazy time right now. I do have an eviction department, a transactional department, a collection department, and a bankruptcy asset recovery department. And I'm frequently involved in litigation when an investor is either being sued or choosing to sue someone else for a variety of reasons. But today, I'm here and have agreed to give you a very brief update. It's difficult for lawyers to only talk for 10 minutes, so I will talk very quickly, and hopefully I came up with 10 tips, but I cut it down to 8. Hopefully I can speed through that for you. A little bit of an introduction to the issues that are going on. I mean, I don't need to tell you exactly what COVID-19 is, but this is a very unprecedented time for investors and particularly landlords. Landlords are really in a tough position right now. There's millions of people losing jobs, particularly those of the lower socioeconomic class, and those happen to be people that rent. So millions of tenants are losing their jobs. The government has declared in various jurisdictions an eviction moratorium. So what I'm really hearing from landlords right now is that I'm hearing from some that say, I feel so bad, I'm just forgiving rent. I don't think that's a particularly good idea because nobody's going to forgive your obligations. I'm also hearing from landlords that they're fearful, and understandably so, that they're not going to be able to maintain the properties, and there's going to be implications for that. They're not going to be able to pay their insurance, they're not going to be able to pay their taxes, and they're not going to be able to make their mortgage payments because tenants aren't paying their rent. So I've kind of come up again with, I've gone from 10 to 8 tips for you. The first one is you need to understand what's going on locally in each jurisdiction in which you own properties. So if you look at my website at www.mo for Missouri, KS for Kansas, LAW for the law.com, under the Forms tab, I have a COVID-19 update. So as each court and each county is coming in, updating their stay-at-home orders, updating their emergency status orders, updating their moratoriums, I'm updating this form so that you can see real-time what's happening in the jurisdiction where your properties are located. My second tip is you need to communicate with your tenants. People who can't pay will often go silent. Or people who think they can get over on you think, oh, I'll just remain silent. And not necessarily the best idea. I want you to be following your policies and procedures. You have to, by law, treat everyone the same, regardless of their race, their color, their religion, their national origin, their age, their sex, their pregnancy, their citizenship, their familial status, or their disability status, which means I really want you to be looking at how do you operate your business, and I don't want you to necessarily change that. You need to follow the terms of your lease. Rent is due when rent is due. I posted on my website a letter for you to send to your tenants. It's under my Forms tab under COVID-19, and it's a letter to tenants, essentially saying, I'm following the terms of my lease. Your rent is due. If you need an accommodation, if you've been impacted by COVID-19, communicate back to me. I want you to be sympathetic. I want you to talk with these people. I mean, obviously, we're not going to punch them. We're not trying to worsen our reputation as a real estate investment industry as a whole. But, you know, people are struggling. And I've come up with a list of tenant resources who are dealing with COVID-19 issues. print it off of my website, give it to your tenants and say, here are places that are willing to help you get your rent paid. You're helping yourself, but you're also sympathetically helping them. My third tip is for you to always get written verification of any accommodation that your tenants are requesting. Don't just take, come on, let's be smart here. We're not going to just believe what tenants say. I mean, I probably have tenants lie to me multiple times every day. We need to get some proof in writing. So I've created a form under the Forms tab on my website that says COVID-19 request for reasonable accommodations to your policies. There's a big difference between a tenant who's completely lost their job due to this virus and one who lost a quarter of their income but still makes $8,000 a month. Those aren't the people that you necessarily need to accommodate. Long story short is that if people cannot pay, you need proof. If they filed for unemployment, when did they file for unemployment? What is their unemployment case number? Follow back up with them. When did they get their unemployment check? What percentage of rent could they pay? How could we get them into some sort of reasonable situation? My fourth tip is encourage your tenants to pay what they can right now. And unfortunately, even partial payments are going to be better than no payments at this moment if people need an accommodation. We are still filing evictions in many jurisdictions. I am expecting a pretty significant delay. I am encouraging people to go ahead, let's file, continue to work with your tenants while I'm waiting for court dates, while I'm trying to get service. Our court dates are being set in many counties out into almost August. So if people haven't paid April, well, first of all, some of you, they haven't paid January. So let's go ahead and get you in line. You can still try and communicate and work with your tenants while I'm doing the court process. And my fifth tip to you is let's get everything in writing. So if they say, I can't pay in full right now, but I can pay this, get it in writing and get it signed. So I've created a blank form for you on our website under the Forms tab. Again, mokslaw.com, Forms, COVID-19 Forms. And I've titled that a repayment agreement. It is in Word format. You can print it off, write it in, or type it in. You can put your letterhead on it. You can use it for your repayment agreements. My sixth tip is reach out to your lenders and see what they can do to help you. Right now, there is a stay on evictions if you have a mortgage, regardless of whether or not they are forbearing your payments, which feels a little bit unfair, but lenders are there and they are accommodating many real estate investors. So go ahead and reach out. I've also made a list for you and put it on my website of economic recovery tools for landlords. If you cannot get an accommodation from your lender, my seventh tip is see if you can qualify for a government loan. The economic injury disaster loans are available for rental property owners in the United States and all the territories. I don't know if it's a good fit for you, but you would likely be eligible. There is some information on my website as to how you might be eligible for that program, as well as a number of other ones. And my final tip for you is that I know many of you are struggling right now with vacancies, and what are you going to do with vacant units? I know there are tenants that are looking. My phones are ringing with questions. Somebody's lost a job. I pre-qualified them. What can I do? What can't I do? We are fielding all types of phone calls right now, trying to get everybody, back up and back into doing work. I am advising landlords to still continue to try and show properties with FaceTime, Zoom, Skype, giving you opportunities to point out, more customized elements to your properties, your cabinets, your appliances, your closets, and still minimizing the risk of any of your current tenants' exposure by just sending in perhaps one person to do a virtual tour. I am seeing some landlords also offer additional incentives, such as 2 weeks free or 1 month free, or some sort of move-in special. Of course, if they default, that move-in special should be taken away. You've got to get that in writing. So those are my top 8 tips. I think I have managed for the first time in life to speak for less than 10 minutes. What kind of questions do you guys have?
So I have a question regarding the eviction, I guess the eviction backup and time frame and whatnot. As you're having those discussions with landlords, property owners, are you seeing evictions for non-payment? Are you seeing evictions for bad behavior? Are you seeing a combination of both? I guess if the courts are shut down, the courts are shut down. You're just kind of hosed either way, right?
Well, the courts in Missouri are not shut down, which means I am able to upload cases, download summons, and I'm using private citizens to serve, private process servers to serve all my papers in the state of Missouri. So I still have 5 or 6 guys out there serving papers. Interestingly, I think people are pretty lonely. I'm getting a lot of personal service. We were surprised. We didn't know as we were approaching tenants' homes if they would be very scared of us, very angry, perhaps violent, but most of them are happy to see someone. A couple people have even thanked us for serving them, which I found somewhat humorous. But this is a great time for us to get service. My process servers have extra time, so we're getting a lot of personal jurisdiction, meaning I'm queuing up to take a lot of money judgments in the future. Now, whether or not I can get a court date and get an actual lockout scheduled anytime between now in July, I don't know. It depends on the county. It depends on the judge in that county. But it doesn't mean there's a moratorium necessarily. We are trying to move forward in the state of Missouri and Kansas. They are accepting our filings in some counties and not others. There is a Supreme Court rule that says they must accept our filings, but they're choosing not to. I don't think at this point in time anybody wants to fund us on an appellate writ. And I don't even think that would be heard either. So we are patiently waiting. I am going to be queuing up more of a large dump once the courts do reopen, trying to get us the earliest possible settings and expedite the turnover. I think that really good communication is going to be important. I haven't heard from anybody in MAREI yet, but there are some tenants that have formed unions and they are not paying together as a coalition. I do anticipate that we will be doing a pretty massive number of evictions in those properties. But I do have to say, I think it's a breakdown in communication. We should be working with tenants on a case-by-case basis. There are many tenants that are considered essential workers and have seen no reduction in pay, if some of them even increase in pay. Those aren't really the people that we want to see not paying. This rent is going to become due. The question is just when, and how long are landlords and investors going to have to wait to get that money. I am not seeing mortgage companies forgive lenders' payments. I am seeing them forbear them, extend the terms on loans. We're seeing a number of ways in which lenders are accommodating during this time, but we are not seeing an across-the-board blanket forgiveness. I don't think that we will, but I mean, what do I know? I didn't think this would happen.
The government has unlimited printing power, right? They could just put out
Sure.
another package that I think they just did. I don't know if it was 350 to 400 billion, but got some more PPP money coming. It was funny that you mentioned the tenant groups too. Just saw a podcast of some groups in Seattle, California area. Obviously, significant amount of those people. I don't know if it was around 20-25% of those people didn't pay, and it was estimated that 50% of those people actually had jobs. So it's spreading a mentality that is telling people not to pay even though they have jobs. It's kind of interesting there.
There'll come a day when they meet me or attorneys like myself, and I mean, that's the day. The law does not provide that, or at least at this time. I mean, there's conversations that there may be rent forgiveness. I can't imagine that there's going to be rent forgiveness without mortgage forgiveness. I mean, there's a lot of my investors that are cash investors. If they were going to forgive rent, the government was going to do that, they would have to somehow forgive your taxes or give you something equivalent. I don't think we're going to see across the board forgiveness. Of course, I'm just one lawyer. There's a coalition of lawyers like myself. We're in New York, we're in Oregon, we're in California, and we're following these things. It seems to be that most of the orders of Democratic governors are similar, and most of the orders coming down from Republican governors are similar. It's very difficult for me to understand what some of these mean, since they're identical to California. Kansas and California are quite different investing environments, but we're still working off the exact same language. So there are lawyers like myself that are coming together saying, how are we going to get our clients through this? What do these things mean? And some of that is why I took the time to draft these forms. I really don't want, I don't care if it's somebody who's not my client who's using it for free, that is fine as well. I just don't want landlords out there making things up based on their emotion of the evening or how many cocktails they've had. I was hoping that we could push out legitimate, kind of non-emotional, factual legal documents for use during this specific period of time.
No, that's really appreciated. I saw those a few weeks ago, and I thought that was really helpful. So that's I think people thank you for that. What numbers are you seeing out there? Obviously, it sounds like your evictions have probably increased. Do you see it increasing over, for the next 6 months? And also, how do you think it'll change, like tenant landlord law, if at all?
Well, I'm not seeing them. Surprisingly, we didn't really know what would happen during this time. Almost all my foreclosures are on stay right now. We're waiting until the stay-at-home orders are lifted to start publication. I want to make sure that we're getting fair bids and people have the opportunity to show up and bid. And our eviction numbers are going significantly down. I think people are trying to figure out what to do. We anticipate come July, once all the federal moratoriums are lifted, that those numbers could be pretty significant. And I would tell people, because of the delays in the court system, if you aren't getting income, I think you should get in line. When I say significant delays, I mean, we could be looking at 5, 6, 7 months without income before I'm able to move your tenant out. Obviously, you didn't project that into your profitability models. So don't wait 5 months to send it. I think that you should probably send it earlier. And again, you can do all sorts of work with your tenants during the time in which a court date is pending. We work with tenants every day. I'll work with tenants up until the day they're locked out if the landlord wants that. Depending on people's circumstances. So we are anticipating that those numbers will go up come July. Right now, I think a lot of investors are in one of two kind of schools. They're waiting to see, or they're just scared and uncertain. And some of them are just forgiving rent across the board, thinking by doing something good like that, they're going to get goodwill. I hope for them that's the case. My general consensus is that when you give somebody something for free, they do not want to pay for it again. But we'll just see here if those people have forgiven April in hopes that they're going to get paid in May. We'll find out in just a few days how that goodwill theory has paid off for them. And again, we are fielding phone calls here. We are open for business. We are considered an essential business. Most lawyers are, but we are advising housing providers, particularly those that are in the multifamily housing arena, are having a number of health crises and concerns. Some advice that I would give to you is that if you are a management company or an owner of a multifamily complex and a tenant has informed you that they are COVID-19 positive, I think you should contact me. We are working with clients to ensure that they're taking preventative steps in the event that they would be sued for wrongful death or personal injury by failing to warn or take additional steps to minimize the liability of other tenants. So we're taking 1 or 2 of those phone calls a day, hoping that if you're getting that information, please do not just ignore it. Don't make up stories like, oh, it's HIPAA. Not exactly. There's a lot of lawyers out there. I know I spoke previously about some asset protection mechanisms. For those of you that are holding properties in your individual name, I really don't think that's a very good idea right now. once the court systems do open. There's a lot of lawyers that are pretty bored right now, and there's going to be some really creative lawyering. And people love to sue real estate investors. They think the investors are the wealthiest portion of our country that have that kind of income to invest in real estate. So we do anticipate quite a bit of additional litigation coming out of this period of time.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious, Julie, something you said there about if you own a property with multiple units, if someone alerts you that they are COVID-19 positive, that you should take certain steps and obviously contact your office. Is there anything that you would recommend maybe as a preventative measure? Like, do people with multi-unit properties, do we now have an obligation to be sanitizing hallways or posting noticing XYZ or anything like that?
I mean, a jury is going to look at the actions of a landlord as what would a reasonable person do under those circumstances. So can I tell you what every jury is going to say? No, but I can definitely tell you that there's tons of information available. No reason why you wouldn't take additional steps to inform your tenants of good behaviors. Go ahead and up your sanitation. Notate all the additional steps that you're taking that you didn't normally take. If you're using more organic products, I think probably at this point in time, switching to everything anti, kill it all. Go to a Clorox-based spray. I know some multifamily units are offering masks, are offering gloves. They've closed down their offices. They're accepting rent in new ways. They're pumping out additional information to their tenants. FYI, there's a stay-at-home order. We as a community are closing down our pools. We're closing down our playgrounds. We're closing down our office. We won't be gathering. Any type of that additional documenting this is always going to be in your favor. My biggest fear, and of course it's not unfounded fear, but is that if somebody is COVID-19 positive, they have informed you and you are not taking these steps. Do you think the unemployed COVID-19 positive person will be sued? Maybe, but why would a lawyer sue them? They don't have any money. They're going to sue the management company, particularly if it began to spread knowingly and that management company or ownership entity did not take additional steps to protect people, to mitigate that kind of loss. So anytime, the thought right now that you just want to dig a hole and put your head in it, probably not the best next step for you when it comes to liability. Again, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what these lawsuits will look like, but I can tell you anytime that someone dies in this country or someone is severely injured, people are always looking at who to blame and who's going to pay for that. Mm-hmm. And while our government can make a lot of money, I think that the lawyers will be looking towards management companies and real estate investors. So not to create mass fear, I'm just saying if somebody informs you, we do have like a 3 or 4 step process that we're walking the specific clients through. The facts of each of these cases are a little different, the density of the population, whether or not these are valid claims. I have to assess each case on its own factual basis, but I have a little checklist that I'm getting for clients that are going through these specific issues.
That's interesting stuff, because that's some new development of some laws that'll come out in some cases for sure. What happens when management companies or owners don't do the necessary steps to protect the current tenants. I have a last question, then we could wrap it up.
Well, document everything. If you learn anything from listening to me today, it's that if you are taking additional preventative steps, you really need to keep a file so that you can remember what you did when or if you ever get sued. And most of my clients who are prepared to be sued are not. It's most of my clients that are not prepared at all that get sued, and then we can't remember what we did.
Right,
okay.
Right.
Last question.
No, that's number one always. And stepping away just from the tenant landlord evictions right now, have you been seeing much about maybe force majeure clauses or just real estate contracts and in general, whether that's commercial or residential? Have you been seeing a lot of pauses on contracts or people canceling them? What do you?
Yes, I mean, have I seen a lot? Force majeure rarely applies to residential contracts. I very rarely see a force majeure clause in a residential contract. So we're seeing a lot more of that in the commercial arena. And it's going to come down to what is the specific language of your contract. This kind of concept that you're going to bring in force majeure from case law, I don't think it's necessarily valid. I mean, we're going to see a lot of creative lawyering in the upcoming months, but it comes down to the terms of your contract. Is that a provision in your contract? I think we're going to see significant delays and cancellations. Most force majeure provisions do not forgive the payment of rent. However, most of my commercial clients are working with their commercial tenants right now and doing forbearance agreements. I probably drafted a handful in the last 2 weeks where we're allowing people whose businesses are closed, not necessarily based on force majeure, but to pay at a later date. But almost all the force majeure provisions I'm seeing in commercial contracts do not forgive the payment of rent. They just stall the obligation to perhaps maintain the property or stay open certain days, or other provisions in those contracts. But again, I think that we're going to see some really interesting litigation come out of this period of time, largely because lawyers are bored. The courts are closed. What are we going to do with these bills?
Right.
They're not very marketable without a system. So I know there are specific consumer attorneys that are frequently meeting, personal injury attorneys that are frequently meeting all over the country, legal aid frequently meeting on how they're going to, progress their clients or their interests forward once the court systems are available. It is not to take people into a tailspin of fear. It's just that is a real possibility for investors. It's a new kind of channel of litigation against them. So I can't stress enough that taking a look at your insurance policies right now is, if you have time on your hands and you're at home, look at your insurance policies. Let's make sure that we've got some asset protection in place. It's much easier to do it now than after you get sued. I can't do a lot for you to protect your assets after they're already exposed. Now you've been told, there's always a possibility. Let's get you into at least a simple LLC, get you some sort of valid operating agreement, clean up your books, take a look at your insurance. There's a lot of things, in my closing, and the last time I spoke with MAREI members, it was, I believe that those that come out of this successful will be successful because of their discipline. Right now is an opportunity for all of us to either stick with a plan of discipline or, hey, go watch Netflix and eat bonbons on the couch, which sounds attractive. But, I'm an attorney and I need to write and help investors move forward. So that's what we're doing here. We're here every day. Even if we don't have the cases and the courts aren't open, I have an attorney right now full-time blogging. So we will be coming out. I've come up with 83 frequently asked questions for investors that I will be pushing out answers to the 83 most frequently asked questions to our law practice. What do I do about emotional support animals? How do I handle security deposit disputes? What provision should my lease have? What are the top 10 dumbest things I could ever do? I was drinking when I wrote that one. The top 10 dumbest things I've seen investors do.
That's definitely some good stories.
There's a little tinge of humor in these. I think you will find. You'll find our voice.
I'm surprised there's only that many. I mean, I'm sure through your lifetime it would be millions for sure.
Yeah. Well, we could only come up with 83 while we were drinking. So we'll come up with some more depending on how long this stay is. We of course hope that investors are going to make better choices. We'll have cleaner cases in the future, and everybody's back to work, making money again. I have to tell at least an investor every day, you are in the a for-profit business here in real estate investment. Please don't forget that and start just giving away things. I know people are sad, they're emotional, they're dealing with depression and anxiety. It's just keep your eye on the ball. This is about discipline, I think, and those investors that are disciplined and good communicators are going to see their businesses come back a lot faster than those that are. But if you are on the couch eating bonbons, I don't mean to disturb your peace at this time while you're watching this.
No, that's appreciative. Yeah, people should definitely look at their structures, make sure they're protected through the necessary LLCs and operating agreements. You could definitely help them with that, along with any evictions they may have. Other than that, I think we're good. I appreciate the updates. I'm sure stuff's pretty fluid and law's going to change pretty frequently here. And
yeah, I'm happy to come back on and talk about it again, or, you know, I am constantly updating that website. So as soon as these court orders and executive orders are coming in, within about a few hours to a day, we're updating the website. So as things are changing, you don't need to be fearful, like I read this or that on the internet. We're trying to take reliable information and get it into one location, as opposed to having investors who are already under stress having to read through a lot of fake news to get the actual information they need about their particular jurisdictions.
Do you update people through, I don't know if you guys have a newsletter or maybe Facebook site? Obviously you said your website. Go over that once again for the people, just as we close here.
Sure. So historically, I did not do a lot of marketing. The majority of what I do comes from clients like you who refer me to other clients like you. And I haven't maintained necessarily a blog or a newsletter or a Facebook page. And I used to be a little even oblivious to social marketing, in that, you know, we do what we do. I have never expected that my kind of law would be terribly loved. I do evict, foreclose, repossess, and bankrupt people in an attempt to bring their assets back. The nice thing about what I do is it is just about money. I don't take anyone's children. I don't take their life, their liberty, or much of their pursuit of happiness in the long term. It's largely about money. However, recently I've read some of the online reviews from the people that I've sued, and so we are starting, while I have some free time, kind of a push to try and get people out there that have used us and who like us, if they would nicely say something about us to counteract all the people that do not like us, who have not had positive experiences with us as we evict them, foreclose on their properties, repossess their equipment and vehicles, and send them to bankruptcy court. Just to counteract that. So we are going to be pushing out this blog of frequently asked questions here in the upcoming month or two. Again, on occasion, I've probably gotten a little snarky, so I have to have somebody proofread all this to make sure that my top 10 stupidest things that investors have done, we're going to take out all the four-letter words and get it out there professionally. Our website at mokslaw.com, under the forms tab, has probably 50 or more free forms for landlords in the state of Missouri and Kansas. They are compliant with each state law. They are in Word format so that you can download them. Please just use them, even if you don't like me, even if you don't like this practice. These are valid forms for these states, rather than just Googling or finding things on Law Depot or some other third-party source. I just have seen a lot of landlords take forms from California and try and use them in Missouri. Not going to work. Taking things from Texas or Louisiana and combining them with language you liked from a New York notice you found on the Google. Again, not going to work. Simple legal forms we're providing for free to investors, just making sure that you guys are queuing up any legal problems that you have successfully.
No, sounds good. Yeah, I'm you talking about obviously having some cases and not making friends on the other side. James and I sure appreciate being on your side versus on the other side. We tend to keep it that way.
All right, sounds like a good plan. I mean, I like the people on my side, and yeah, it was quite an interesting read to read the tenant comments. Um,
Yeah, yeah. There's always going to be a winner loser. Well, hopefully there's some compromise, but that's why we have people like you to help us out, because there's sometimes a lot of money on the line for sure.
yeah,
Yes.
and you've got to be disciplined right now about making sure that you stay profitable enough, protected enough to make it into this next quarter.
Right.
Um, you just, that's not legal advice, that's business advice. And
Right.
I try and narrowly give people my legal advice, not my business advice, but profitability is going to be really imperative as we try and get back out there.
No, yeah, I mean, you have a lot of experience, obviously, with tons of different scenarios. You run a business yourself, so you know what you're talking about. Other than that, I think we're good. We won't take any more of your time because it's super expensive. I'm glad we didn't necessarily have to pay for it, unless you're probably going to send us the bill. But
No, John, I already saw it come through the email.
oh yeah, so I figured something like that happened. But other than that, thanks, Julie. If we have something crazy come up in the next weeks or months, so we're definitely happy to have you on. I'm sure Kim Tucker will have you at one of the meetings once we can meet in person again. But other than that, we really appreciate taking some time and give us an update on the landlord tenant relationships we have going on right now.
Great. Well, happy to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Julie. Thanks,
Thanks.
James.